I showed up at the lake thinking I was walking into peace, and the first thing I found was a laminated HOA notice, zip-tied to my own dock gate like somebody had marked my name off a list. Not the community dock, not the boat ramp, my dock on my land. And the wild part, whoever put it there didn't even bother leaving a phone number, just a seal and a threat, like authority is real if you print it in bold. The gravel shifted under my tires as I took the last slope down through the pines, that skinny road my uncle used to call half the security system, because if you couldn't make it down without bottoming out, you probably didn't belong here anyway. Dusk was settling in when the cabin came into view, low roof, cedar siding turned that old silvery gray, chimney leaning just a little like it was tired of standing straight. The porch sagged in one corner. A windshield hung under the eaves, rusted so stiff it barely moved, but it still made that soft clink when the breeze got nosy. When I opened the truck door, the air hit me like a memory with teeth, pine, damp earth, lake water, and that other thing, stillness. Not peaceful stillness either. The kind that sits in forgotten places and watches you back. Inside, it smelled stale and brittle, like time had been left on low heat. Uncle's recliner was still there. The oak table with the cracked leg. The wood stove crusted with ash. Curtains yellowed by sun. I didn't talk to the house. I'm not that guy. I just opened windows until the lake air pushed in and started arguing with the dust. Then I went down to the shoreline, slow, boots sinking a little in soft ground where runoff had carved it over the years. The path was narrow but clear, too clear. Patches of grass looked flattened, like people had been using it recently. At the bottom, the dock was still there, long, weathered, slightly tilted at the end, but holding. The gate 2-iron frame, with slats, the same top rail I'd gripped as a kid. Only now, dead center, was that laminated notice, zip-tied like it was born there. Access requires HOA permission. Remove lock or face fines. Shoreline Policy 3.4. Shared use zone. Enforcement action pending. No signature. No contact. Just Ridgewater Lakeside HOA, stamped at the bottom like a judge's gavel. I stood there reading it 3 times, like the words would start making sense if I stared hard enough. There was no HOA when my uncle owned this place. None when I inherited it. Nobody called me. Nobody mailed me. I never signed anything. But that piece of plastic sat on my gate like I'd missed a meeting in 2017, and now I owed the lake an apology. And the lake didn't look like I remembered either. New docks lined the cove, bright composite boards, solar lights, motion sensors, rope ladders for paddleboards, neat little signs. Lot 12, HOA use only, like the shoreline had been turned into a managed product. I counted docks that didn't exist the last time I was here. Some stretched farther out than they should. One angled into water I could have sworn was part of my uncle's boundary line. My chest did that tight knot thing it does when something is wrong, but you haven't named it yet. That night I sat on the porch with the lights off, reheated coffee in a chipped mug, and watched moonlight smear across the water. Somewhere across the cove, a balcony light clicked on, and I saw the glint of binoculars, just for a second, before it turned away. No wave. No hello. Just watching. By morning, I wasn't calm anymore. I was focused. I was crouched near the dock, checking bolts, when I heard boots on gravel, slow, deliberate, like someone walking with purpose instead of wandering. I looked up, and there she was, standing at the top of the slope like she owned the view. Clipboard. Neutral face. 2 men in matching polos behind her, and a woman in running gear like she jogged here to supervise my life. "We need to talk about your access restrictions," she called down, voice clean and practiced, like she'd said it 100 times. "You're currently in violation of shoreline policy. Community access to the water cannot be restricted. Your gate is locked." I stood up slow, wiped grit off my palms. "That dock's been locked for 20 years, I said. "Long before any HOA existed out here." Her lips tightened like I'd just insulted her haircut. "Access rights were voted in by majority in 2017, she said. "It applies to all lots within Ridgewater Lakeside." "I never joined," I told her. "I never signed anything." "Participation is automatic," she said, flipping a page like reality was printed in her binder. "Recorded with the county." Then she held out a stapled packet between 2 fingers like it was dirty. "Formal notice. 7 days to correct. After that, $50 a day. Doubles weekly." She smiled when she said doubles. Not wide, just enough to let me know she enjoyed math when it hurt people. I took the paper, not because I accepted it, but because I needed to see what story they were telling themselves. "I'll review the deed," I said. and that was the first time her face twitched. Just a little. Like I'd said the one word she didn't want in the room. "Bring whatever you have to the compliance review," she said, turning. Thursday, 7:30, Pavilion Hall. They walked away in that synchronized board member way, trained to look like they're not a gang even when they absolutely are. And I stood there holding the packet, staring at my doc, realizing this wasn't about a lock. This was about someone rewriting the shoreline one policy at a time. So I did what you do when somebody starts inventing rules on top of your property. I went to where paper lives. The cabin had no internet. No digital shortcuts. Just old drawers and stubborn wood. I dug through file cabinets full of fishing licenses and bait receipts. Cigar boxes. Old boat tags. Hand-drawn maps of good base spots like my uncle was running a secret navy. Nothing. Until I remembered the cabinet under the sink. Right side. The one that always stuck when I was a kid. I wedged it open with a pocket knife, swore under my breath, and there it was, a thick yellowed envelope tied with brittle red string. Doc Survey 1989. My chest tightened, not from fear, from recognition. Proof has a smell, and it smells like dust and relief. Inside was a typed letter dated April 12, 1989, from a registered land surveyor. It referenced parcel 487L, listed 4 docs, A, B, C, and D, and said, plain as day, that my deed included exclusive access rights not contingent on shared use agreements, predating any subdivision charter. No map, though. No diagram. Just words. Helpful, but not enough to shut down a woman with a clipboard and a taste for fines. So I drove into town and found an older attorney named Daniel Shore, the kind of guy who had more maps than furniture and looked like he'd spent his entire career watching small people try to act big. He read the notice, exhaled slow, and said, "This isn't enforcement. This is pressure." Then he leaned back and hit me with the line that kept me up that night. "If they can get you to unlock the gate once," he said, "they'll call it implied consent. Doesn't matter what you signed. They're building precedent with your silence." So I stopped being silent. I went to the county recorder's office, cold brick building, fluorescent lights humming like bees. A clerk with tired eyes who didn't ask questions, just handed me cotton gloves and slid a heavy ledger across the counter like she was serving justice in hardcover. I flipped through yellowed pages until I saw it. Parcel 487L. My uncle's name. Boundary lines inked with surveyor precision. And there, drawn out into the water, for rectangles labeled Doc A, Doc B, Doc C, Doc D, all connected to my parcel. Not shared. Not community-controlled. Private. Exclusive. Recorded. Stamped. I felt something in me unclench that I didn't even realize I'd been holding. The clerk watched me stare and said quietly, "Most people don't come looking for this." "Why not?" I asked. She shrugged. "They think what's current is what's right. They forget this office is where everything starts." I paid for certified copies, tucked them into an envelope like they were gold bars, and drove back to the lake with my hands steady on the wheel, and my mind already picturing Karen's face when paper beat policy. But Karen didn't slow down. 2 days after I got back, I pulled into my driveway and froze. A brand new metal post had been bolted into the bedrock at the base of my slope, right by my dock, with a clean sign that read, "HOA Shoreline. Authorized use only." They hadn't asked. They hadn't warned. They'd just planted their flag. That's when I learned a hard truth about people like Karen. They don't negotiate, they escalate, and they do it with paperwork and optics, because it makes them feel righteous while they take what they want. I didn't rip the sign out like an angry caveman. That's what they wanted. I photographed the bolts, the placement, the drill holes, every angle. Then I removed it slowly, carefully, and leaned it against my porch with a handwritten note taped to it. Unauthorized install. Private parcel. Next morning, a citation showed up from the township. Destruction of community infrastructure. Complete with a cropped photo of my hand on the post like I was vandalizing a public monument. Daniel read it and said, "Okay, now they're using the system." And that was the moment it stopped being annoying and started being personal. Then the twist came from the last place I expected. One evening I heard soft footsteps at the property line. Not boots, not heavy, and a man stepped out of the trees like he'd been living inside the drama for years. Mid-50s, windbreaker zipped to his neck, baseball cap low. He didn't cross onto my gravel. Just raised a hand. "Not here to cause trouble," he said. "Just tired of watching it happen." He walked forward just enough to place a small black thumb drive on my porch rail, then backed away like it might burn him. "Used to serve on the board," he said. Treasurer. Karen's been doing this a long time. And then he disappeared back into the woods without even giving me his name. I stood there staring at that little piece of plastic like it weighed 100 pounds. Inside, I plugged it into my old laptop. One folder popped up, internal minutes. Spreadsheets. Emails. Rental logs. Deposit lines. Dock access revenue. Slip 2, slip 3, slip 4 year after year thousands per summer. And 3 audio clips. I clicked the first one and heard chairs scraping, papers shuffling, and then Karen's voice, clear as day, laughing like a villain who thinks nobody's recording. He won't dig, she said. He's just seasonal. We've had access for years. They can't undo precedent. Another voice asked, what if he challenges it? Karen didn't miss a beat. Then we escalate, she said. We make it expensive. My stomach went cold, not because I was scared, because I finally understood the game. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't community governance. It was a hustle with a letterhead. Daniel listened to the audio once, looked at me and said, this isn't a dispute. This is fraud. So we stopped playing defense. We mailed a cease and desist with certified copies of the county plat, a water rights consultant's letter confirming repair and control, screenshots of their rental page, and the financial logs that showed they'd been profiting off my docks. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just facts, stapled to consequences. And then we walked into that pavilion hall meeting Karen tried to control like a stage. The room was packed, retirees, families, couples with crossed arms, everybody pretending they were only there for community business, while their eyes flicked toward me like I'd brought a snake. Karen opened with her usual warm poison continuity, shared values, trust over paperwork, the whole sermon. Then she invited comments. I stood up, calm, binder in hand, and started passing out copies. County certified plats, consolidation filings, consultant affidavits, screenshots of their dock rental listings. No yelling. No speeches. Just paper. And then I played 14 seconds of audio. Karen's own voice, saying I wouldn't dig, saying they'd escalate, saying they'd make it expensive. The room changed like a weather front moved through it. Someone behind me muttered, she said that? A woman in the third row said, wait, you rented those docks out? Karen lunged for the mic like she could wrestle reality back into her control. This is manipulation, she snapped. An ambush. Illegal recordings. Harassment. But she could hear it too, couldn't she, that soft cracking sound of authority breaking when people stopped believing in it. The board members didn't defend her. Not one stood up to save her. And that, more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. A motion was made to suspend all dock-related enforcement until an independent review. Hands went up. Dozens. Only a couple abstained. Karen stormed out, furious, clutching her clipboard like it could protect her. A week later, her countersuit got tossed without a hearing. No standing. Private ownership confirmed. The HOA shoreline access map vanished from their website like it had never existed. A newsletter showed up quietly announcing Karen's resignation. One sentence, no explanation, like they were erasing her the same way she tried to erase people. And me? I rebuilt the dock. Fresh cedar. Straight boards. New hardware. No signs. No chains. No trespassing stencils. Because here's the lesson that hit me late, and it hit hard. Power doesn't always kick your door in. Sometimes it shows up smiling, holding a clipboard, speaking in policy language, and betting you'll be too tired to check the records. It counts on people confusing what everyone's been doing with what's legal, and it survives on that quiet little human weakness, the instinct to avoid conflict even when you're being robbed politely. I almost gave them that. Almost. Now I stand at the end of my dock some evenings, listening to water tap the pilings the same way it did when I was a kid, and I think about how close I came to being rewritten out of my own shoreline, just because someone printed bold words on plastic. So let me ask you something. Where's the line for you? When does community turn into control, and when does keeping the peace become helping the wrong people win? Drop a comment and tell me, was I right to go scorched earth with receipts, or should I have handled it quieter? And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a neighbor, or any little power-hungry system that tried to bully you off what was yours, I want to hear that story too.